Hey, how do you want me to introduce you? Toby Henderson, Captain Elbows?
I don't know. I have a few nicknames, but
Which one do you like?
I don't know. Captain Elbows is good. Never liked Coca-Cola Cowboys. Hollywood, there's a few of them. So
Coca-Cola.
You're known by Coca-Cola Cowboy.
yeah, a lot of people know me by Coca-Cola Cowboy.
Okay. Hollywood.
Hollywood. Those are
We talked about
the
that
big
too.
ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Rhinestone
One,
Cowboy.
2, 3. Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show with my co-host Yolanda M. Smith, who is once again out doing her thing, teaching people how to be a branthropist and brand that name. Today, by way of satellite from, I believe, is California.
Yes, sir.
We have no other than the man himself, the Coca-Cola Cowboy, Mr. Hollywood, and the one I like. Let's do it again. I wrote the names down wrong. Okay.
Captain Elbows.
Captain Elbows. Okay, let me do it again. Okay, so
Tell him it's Hollywood Henderson.
Coca-Cola Cowboy, Hollywood.
Henderson.
Hollywood Henderson.
You know we're gonna get him on the show.
What's that? Who?
Hollywood Henderson.
There's another Hollywood Henderson?
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys, Thomas Henderson.
Oh, I didn't know that. They called him
Yeah.
Hollywood?
Yeah.
I can't believe they call Miranda Hollywood, but whatever.
Captain Elbows, Toby Henderson. Okay, let's do it again.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Hi, and welcome to another exciting wait, do it again. What part of California you in?
Southern California.
Southern California. Is that where you're originally from?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show with my co-host Yolanda M. Smith, the branthropist. Today I'm doing a solo, but I'd like to tell you the story about, no, I'm gonna let him tell the story. We have in studio by Zoom no other than the man himself, Captain Elbows, the Coca-Cola Cowboy, Mr. Hollywood, Toby Henderson. What's up, big guy?
Hey, Andre, how are you doing?
I'm trying to get these intros in jam-packed.
There's a lot of names to do there. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what's going on where you at. You in Southern California right now.
Yeah, it's sort of a little gray outside, as you can probably see. But yeah, we're Sunday afternoon. We're just we're going to go for a hike here a little bit. Since my wrists don't work anymore, we've talked about that. But yeah, just going to go for a hike today and getting ready to head off to Germany next week to a bike show and over to France to see some, some sights and stuff, and then back home back to work. So yeah, we got a busy month ahead of us.
So tell the viewers a little bit about Captain Elbow and how all these names came out. Just give us a little, take us down. Let's do like this. I got a series of pictures here, and we're going to go through the life and times of Mr. Henderson, Toby Henderson. So tell the viewers a little bit about you and so forth, so we can get this going.
Well, okay, so in the 1978, I turned pro as a professional BMXer. Long story, but I really wanted to make money riding a bicycle or do the things I loved, and so I set out to become a professional athlete on a bicycle. And at the time, in the late 70s, early 80s, BMX was a huge sport. And luckily, I was able to become a pro and start with a company called Raleigh Bicycles, who sent me all over the world and going to all the races, and really lucky to have that kind of sponsorship because I really took that to travel.
Right.
During that time, I became Coca-Cola Cowboy. Why they asked, I don't know why that name came about, but I was Coca-Cola Cowboy for a long time. And then somewhere during that career, the BMX career, I started winning a lot of races to the point where I had a couple of years where I was just basically unbeatable. And then my name had changed from Coca-Cola Cowboy to Captain Elbows, right?
So Toby, tell the audience exactly what BMX actually is.
Well, It's a 20-inch bike that you see the kids ride around on the streets, but we race around a track in the dirt and berms, and 8 guys take off from the starting gate. The races are 30, 35 seconds long. You do that multiple times during the day, and you weed out and you kind of pare down to the final 8 guys.
Mhm.
And those final 8 guys go for the money, right?
Okay.
It's an Olympic sport. It became an Olympic sport in 2008.
Really?
Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal. I mean, of course, in my day that wasn't happening, but it became the very first X Games style sport that made it to the Olympics. Because the Olympics always had a problem with viewership. It started kind of getting old, especially after
Right.
X Games and all that. They needed an exciting kind of sport. So BMX was the very first one in 2008, which the companies I run now have been the sponsor of those events ever since 2008. So we're the official sponsor for the Olympics.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, so the sport itself is just a bunch of kids in a dirt field that turned it into an Olympic sport, 30, 40 years later.
So were you born and raised in Southern California?
Well, you can ask my wife, and I have different opinions of that. But no, I was born in Indiana, Andre. I don't know if you
What?
knew that. Yeah, I was born in Bedford, Indiana,
Okay.
and I moved to California at 9 months old.
Okay.
So yeah.
So
So
do
I've
you
been
have
here
memories of Indiana, or you have more memories of California?
Oh, well, California, I've been here my whole life. But every time I come to Indiana, I go down to Bedford, Olynyk, and see the family. I have a lot of family there. So yeah.
So when you talk about BMX bikes, what kind of bike actually is that? Because it's definitely not the kind of bike I'm just going to go out and buy in the
I
store
don't know.
and
It's
be
hard to explain.
competitive with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certain levels of a bike that can be competitive, but it's a 20-inch wheel. It's what every kid grows up on. Some of the cheaper ones are called sidewalk bikes, but every
Okay.
bike's just basically, you kind of sit triple triangle frame, and you kind of sit up and you ride the bike, and as the bikes get better and you start to jump them or you take them into the dirt, then you all of a sudden need, a little bit better of equipment. And but it's basically a bicycle to do what the motorcycle guys do, right? So the motorcycle guys run around the track with the motor. Bicycle's the same. The BMX is the same thing. It's called bicycle motocross for a reason, BMX. And the idea is to ride your bike in the dirt, jump it, and go around corners and all that stuff without a motor.
And your
Also,
engine is the motor is your legs.
you add your heart and a bunch of other things it takes, because you need lungs and all kinds of stuff for that, right?
So what triggered you to go that way? Because clearly you played other sports, but what was it in general that said, you know what, I want to go this route?
I think, riding a bike gave me a lot of freedom, right? When I was, younger age, I was able to ride away from the house at 12 years old and go to a race. I literally rode my bike 4 miles down the road and raced my bike and got a little ribbon cost 25 cents to race. But I think it was the freedom of the bicycle that it gave me, because I played a lot of sports, like you said, basketball, baseball. I did all those things in school, but I think it was the ability to take the bike and go out and explore and ride the bike around on my own, my own free will, I think was what got me into it. And of course, I love to jump. As a very young age, I was jumping the bike like a wild man. And I think that really got me excited about it. And I also think that helped my career later on, because I used to have to pedal really hard to jump. And then, of course, in racing, you have to pedal really hard in the very beginning to start. So I think that helped a bunch, that I just love to ride and jump my bike and ride it in the dirt. And, I raced motorcycles for a long time. So it's a story. It's a longer story, but I raced motocross for a while, but I found that I could make money on a bicycle where I couldn't really make the money on the motorcycle. And I started racing the bicycle to earn a living doing what I love, right? And worked in a bike shop. And I just was in the bicycle industry and kind of led the whole BMX sport into where, like you said, now it's an Olympic sport, right? So
When did you find out that you can make money doing this? How
that's
old were you?
That's a good story. I was probably 17, maybe even 16. I was probably 16, and I was racing motorcycles. I was digging ditches during the week, and I would take all that money and go race a motorcycle. And that's where I really had my passion. Well, I had a friend of mine who was a professional BMX rider at the time, and he said, come see him at a race this weekend. So after I rode my motorcycle that morning, came home, showered up, and I went to a local field somewhere by my house, and couldn't do a race. And I saw him win $300. This is 1978.
That's a lot of
Right?
money.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I just made $70, digging ditches, and it cost me that to buy a tire for my bike. So anyway, the next morning, so Monday morning, I sold the motorcycle. I went straight to a bike shop and bought a BMX bike, which I had a previous BMX experience. And I decided to become a pro. I just made my decision to go. When I saw him win that money, I made a decision to do it. And I went to a race. I won that race and became a professional. And a year later, I was riding for Raleigh bicycles. And like I said, all over the world. And him and I were the very first, we were teammates, wound up being teammates, the very first BMXers to travel outside the United States, Europe, Australia. And we went all over the world for Raleigh bicycles at the time, which was the biggest bike company in the world. So, yeah, it's crazy.
I'm looking at these pictures. So let's take a tour down the life of a professional BMX world champion. Let's clarify that, world champion rider. So let's look at this first picture. You're on the cover of a magazine and you're what, about 21, 20 years old?
Yeah, yeah, about 21 there, I think. Yeah, it was all blurry back then. There was so much of it going on, but I think I'm 21 in that photo. The cover of that magazine was very iconic. I was on the cover of that particular magazine almost 12 times throughout my career. On my mountain bike career, which we'll get into, I was on the cover many times as well. But yeah, that picture was things were good back then. I think it was Captain Elbows by that point.
Now you got to tell me, when I met you, you said Captain Elbows. How did you get the name Captain Elbows?
I think it's my style. I think I ride with my elbows out, and I use them to kind of. It was a contact sport. BMX was a contact sport, not as much as it is today, but we literally had to hit each other around the track to win. You know, that's how we rode. You know, so you're racing 8 guys and you're bumping off of each other, and I ride with my arms out and I use those elbows to get ahead of the other guys. And
so you actually use the elbows to throw your opponent off of their bicycle, and if you get thrown off, are you allowed to get back on? Tell me about.
Well, if you fall off, it's over. The race is only 30 seconds, right? 35 seconds.
Whoa.
So if you fall off, it's over. That's it. So you use them to bump your way through. You don't get a good start. You have to bump your way. You come into a corner and you hit a guy and you knock him, you know, maybe not down, but knock him a little bit sideways. You try to go through, and and then you're going and somebody behind you hits you. And it was a contact.
So there is a technique to doing this. It's not just.
Yeah. And if I didn't come home with a wad of cash in my pocket or skinned up, I didn't try. That was always my thing. Well, if I don't come home with a wad of money or skinned up, meaning I crashed, someone knocked me down, I wasn't trying. So
what did your mom and dad and your family think about deciding to do this as a sport? And you just said, if I didn't come home beat up I didn't do my job. So what was more, not your father, but more so, what was your mother saying? Oh my God, why you come home like this?
She didn't come to the races anymore after she saw a couple of those times. She went to a motorcycle race with me when I was in high school. And there was 90 guys on the starting gate, literally. I'm in 3rd place in the first corner, and somebody hits me, we crash, and 87 guys run me over, right?
Wow.
So on a motorcycle. So that was it. My mom said, I'm never going again. And she didn't. She literally just never went and watched me do it again. She couldn't take it. So
when you did this, how many races were you doing it about at this age?
Well, during my height of my mountain bike career, BMX career, I flew away 40 weekends. Flew from home to an event 40 weekends and probably drove to another 10. So yeah, it was every single weekend for about 4 or 5 years we were doing this.
What was training like? Because now this is a different type of sport. It's evolving. It's blowing up. It's getting ready to go to the Olympics, and you're in your 20s. What was the training like for this? You're not training like you're playing football or basketball or bodybuilding. You're probably doing, you tell me, what's your training?
Well, I think back then we didn't know, and I don't think, we weren't in tune with the bodies. Like my mountain bike career is another story, and we'll get into that. But in BMX career, we just rode. And I said, if I rode a few times a week, had to get on the plane Mondays and Fridays, right? But if I rode a few times a week, and then raced all weekend, that was pretty, when you come home from a race weekend, you're beat up. You're physically beat up, not the crashing part, but it was pretty tough. Sprinting, it was all about the sprint. It was all about the start. So we were sprinters for 30, 40 seconds, right? That was our jobs. And, I got hernias from it. I got a lot of, things from taking my midsection and really trying to go fast from dead stop to fast. But no, just riding. I think it was just riding. We didn't, of course, we had the gym and we understood these things, but I didn't run. We lifted some weights here and there, and that was kind of going on. But I don't think we were educated enough back in the early 80s to understand all that. But we just rode our bikes, which was probably the best way to do it. Just as long as you're on that bike all the time. And we rode every day, basically.
So at that age, what do you think your advantage was that kept you on your A game versus the other competitors? Because like you said, the technology, which we'll talk about in a minute, the technology wasn't there. You basically are almost free falling, but you had to have some type of psychological, mental, and physical edge over your opponents at that, besides being young and youthful at that time.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I think I didn't do well was the desire to win probably wasn't as strong as it maybe should have been a long time. But being in the limelight and running around the world and having that lifestyle was very important to me to do that. I mean, a lot of kids followed us and asked for autographs and all that kind of thing. So there was periods of time where I really wanted to win, and other times I was just happy to be in the main event. But I think a lot of it, is money motivated.
Yep.
I was making a lot of money. I was spending a lot of money, and I think a lot of that. But no, I think just the recognition of doing well, standing on the podium, making money, making the cover of the magazines. It was just a lifestyle that really drove me, right? And I did it for almost 10 years for BMX. So
that's a long time. So let's
long
get to
time.
the second part of of these pictures that I'm looking at. We are proud, once again, guys, tune in, subscribe, like, share. We have no other than Captain Elbows himself, Mr. Toby Henderson, in studio by way of Zoom from Southern California. Okay, I'm looking at this next picture. 1983.
Yes,
that's a good year.
That was a good year for me.
There.
Yes.
It's two pictures. It's two pictures here.
Yeah. Well, it's me winning a race. And if you look at that photo, if everybody's looking at that photo, it's 1983. There's somewhere around 50,000 people in the audience. You can see
that's
around.
Right.
It was a huge event, and in that event, you pair down to 8 guys, and if you look at the number plates in that race, everybody has a single digit. That means the system worked in a sense of you start off with 50 guys, 60 guys that day, and you finally get to the final 8 through qualifications. And when the final 8 guys all have a single digit, for me, the system works. I happen to win that one that day. And those numbers are based upon our last year's point systems. And it was a huge day. I won about $6,000 that day in 1983 at 21 or 22 years old, however I was, maybe 23. It was a big deal, back then to win that kind of money. That was a huge event, and those were the best riders in the world. And I was able to pull it off. So
how do you qualify? When you say it sounds almost like when I was competing in bodybuilding, you have the preliminaries and you got to qualify, and then the top 5, you might have 100 guys in your weight, only the top 15 comes back. How do you guys do it in your sport?
Yeah, so basically you put 8 guys in a race, and you'll run 2 or 3 races, and your finishes of those 2 races give you a point system, and you go to the next race where you eliminate some guys, and you meet another group of guys, and you eliminate those guys, and you meet another group of guys, you eliminate till you get to the final 8, right? So it would take you all day long, that 30-second sprints, to get to that final event. And then
what was the learning part between picture 1 to the second picture that we're looking at? In other words, what was the involvement? What was the evolve process?
Well, I think it was just a desire to win. I think we started earlier about started off being a Coca-Cola cowboy. I was flamboyant. I was making all the covers of the magazine. I was having fun with the whole thing. And then when I took it seriously is when I became Captain Elbows. And I think it was just more of a mental thing at that point. When I realized I could win, and I realized I could beat everybody else, it was a mental game at that point. Then you had to stay on that game, right?
Right.
Yeah, and the eating. I mean, I never really ate during the day. That was kind of a weird thing. You probably tell me differently, but if I had anything in my stomach in both my BMX and mountain bike career, I couldn't perform. So I literally would go all day long without food, right? And then at night would just pig out because the day's over, right? But yeah, when you're sprinting like that, you don't want anything in your belly. But anyway, I think the evolution was just mental at that point, because back then our workouts weren't, I don't know, weren't growing like they maybe should have been. We just didn't know, right? Education was not there. So
The other picture that I'm looking at, I can see a difference in, I guess it's BMX. This looks like that you're in some type of mountain.
yeah, so when I was 28, I did it for about 2 years. The sport had slowed way down on BMX. So just the sponsorship dollars weren't there. The BMX had gone to freestyle. It's a whole long story. But a new sport, mountain biking, started.
Okay.
So I started racing mountain bikes because I wanted that lifestyle. I did not want to go in the family business, not at all. So anyway, I started racing mountain bikes. I literally had to, this is where the whole training thing changed for me. Right. Then I had to learn about trading. Then I had to figure this all out, because now it was about long distance at this point, right? Not this 30-second sprint. We're talking hour and a half, 2-hour rides, right? Up mountains and down mountains. And I'm a pretty big guy. And I literally in my BMX career, I was in the 180-pound range. And in mountain biking, I had gotten down to 165 at one point. And I was already at 180. I'm pretty thin anyway. But that became a long distance thing for me. But I never really did that well in the long distance. I had spent a couple of years at it. I was making a little bit of money here and there, but there was a lot of guys who were smaller, skinnier, bigger lungs, or whatever it takes to be a long distance guy. But I transformed my body. I learned about training. I hired people to train me, because this sport was completely different than the sport I had before. Didn't succeed that well in the beginning, but about 2 years into it, they started racing just down the hill.
Mhm.
It's, you take the chairlift up, you race down the hill, and the photo we're looking at is me racing down the hill. And you can look, I'm really thin and fit there in that picture. But
Yeah, I
this
see
point,
that.
I'm well in my 30s at this point. And most of my competition was in the early 20s. I'm in my early 30s there, maybe 35 in that photo. And but anyway, so the sport of downhill started. And I had the skills from riding the bike, Captain Elbows. And then I had the training for the cross country of mountain biking. So we started racing down the mountain. It took about 5 minutes to go down. So now it's a 5-minute sprint, right?
Because you're still in the biking industry, in the biking sport, did anybody recognize you as the legend switching over?
Oh yeah. That was part of it. I was given bikes from the very beginning on. I was given bikes. I was told to do this. I was asked to go to these places. I got sponsorships right out of the gate. And then when I was on the track, people would yell out, "This guy came from this sport," and yeah. So I think that was a part of it, because when it got serious for me and I started making money again, I went to a sponsor and they knew my history as a BMXer. I was able to get a ride that paid a lot of money and flew me again around the world. At this point, now I'm going all over the world. We had a World Cup events. I'm going to countries all over the place, racing downhill on mostly ski resorts. Take the chairlift up, race down the mountain, spend the 4 or 5 days doing that. And always loved that sport, because you knew on Sunday when the race was, you knew you left at 10:05 was your start time. At 10:10 you were done, right? You were done for the day. That was awesome, right? So in BMX, you had to kind of wait around a lot for the events. But no, yeah, I had a lot of recognition from the past, and I was able to find the right sponsors. And I went out and had another career for 10 years, and I raced mountain bikes till I was 38 years old. And at 38, I just pretty much most of the guys winning at that point was 21, 25. That was the guys winning at 38 years old, even though I was still doing well. And I won some races that year. It was time for me to hang it up. So I won that full 20 seasons in.
How did your it's a two-part question. The success that you brought from BMX racing over to the mountain bike racing, were there haters? I mean, you can't have that much success without having people go, what the hell is he here for? Did you have those type of villains that you was like, I'm gonna beat your ass today? Because in sports, I know when I'm on stage, it's about business. I'm not your friend.
Yeah. No,
what was it like for you?
It was funny because, for 20 years of my life, I stood at the starting gate or top of a hill because in BMX and mountain bike is the same thing. I stood up there with a bunch of guys that I knew were competitive, and all we really did when you're waiting to go is to make fun of each other, try to do derogatory statements, whatever it took to mentally mess that guy up before the race started, right? And that was 20 years of really trying to find a ways to mess with the other guy's head, right? Hoping he'll make a mistake on the track. Hopefully he'll it was a mental game. A lot of that, especially when it's the same guys. I mean, a lot of the guys transferred over with me. So I had these same guys in BMX that I did in mountain biking, at least the top ones. We've known each other for a long
Who do
long
you
time.
remember the most? Who gave you the most right to this day that you go, man, that dude really gave me hell?
Well, in BMX, I had one nemesis. His name was Stu Thompson. He was the best there was. He was the best. He's the greatest of all time for sure. And he was the guy I had to focus on beating. And if I could beat that guy, I was having a good day. But in mountain biking, it became a different thing. It was a much younger group of guys that were BMXers that came over. And probably my nemesis at that point was a kid named Brian Lopes, who was exactly 10 years younger than me. And the kid was smaller, fast, healthy. And beating him was a good day. So yeah, there was a few of those.
What did he say when he got his first competition against you? Did he come up?
Well, it's funny. It was because I knew his parents. I actually helped him get his BMX career started. And then when we got to the races, his parents, I said, the day Brian beats me is the day I quit. Right. Well, he beat me pretty early on. I didn't quit, but I had said that, because here's this kid 10 years younger than me coming up. And of course, he became one of the best downhillers of all time from America. So, yeah, those are the two guys that was really difficult to beat.
That's a dangerous sport. How fast are you actually going downhill?
Well, I was one of the fastest guys to go down the Mammoth Kamikaze at 69 miles an hour. Right. So, and I'm in my early 30s at this point, and our bikes really weren't that good. But it was a fire road, and they had a speed trap through there, and I went 69 miles an hour through the speed trap. So it's flying.
And you didn't wipe out?
No, I actually, my whole career, I never really had. I had some collarbones and some shoulders and some fingers, but I was lucky, man. I came out of this whole thing without too many injuries. So, yeah.
Let's look at another picture. And this is a picture that I like. I'll be the first. I like this picture. It looks like you are more mature. You got a thought process taking place. Tell me about this particular picture.
I think we're talking about the one with the hat,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
No, at this point, my career is over. What am I going to do with my life? So it's funny is we get in the business side of this. When I was 12 years old, I put a sticker on my window of my room, and it was a bicycle sticker. And I said, I want to make bike parts. I knew that at 12 years old, but the racing thing happened for the 20 years. So in this picture, you're seeing me really, really focused on what I'm going to do as a entrepreneur businessman at this point, taking 20 years of riding a bike and making products that I didn't have when I was a rider, things I would have changed. I would have made a different tire, a different handle grips, a shoe, whatever.
Well, that's pretty smart, Toby, that your mind was evolving at that age, and you was taking notes on what was imperfections with your bike and taking it to another level.
Well, I was really lucky because, the equipment, especially on my mountain bike career, became really, really important. And I knew that if a guy had a better shock or a better tire, I had a deficit, right? Mm-hmm. So that hat I'm wearing is Toby Henderson Enterprises. I started that company right out of I started my first product in 98, the year I retired. And I started making products under that brand. Wildly successful, had a bunch of successes and a bunch of failures. And now 20 years later, here we are 23 years later, and I'm still doing it. I'm still making product. I'm still testing product. I'm still writing product. And I think there's another photo up there too somewhere, Andre, where a bunch of dirt flying around me or something.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, so yeah, I love that photo. That's probably my favorite of the bunch, only because at this photo, just almost 60 years old. This is a couple years ago, and that's that same mountain I went 69 miles an hour down. But the bike now is 100 times better than it was in the 90s, right? And I'm doing 60 miles an hour in that photo at 59 years old, flying down that same mountain. But the bike is just probably helping with that. I don't know how fast maybe the young guys can do it now, But yeah, so I still do it. I was sponsoring that event. I love that hill. I love that mountain. It's in Mammoth, California. The race is called the Kamikaze. I did very well at it for many, many years. It's just flying down a mountain. If you look at that photo, it's pretty intense. You can kind of see the rocks and the dirt
I
flying.
see everything.
Yeah, and my foot's out like hanging off.
I can't see your face, so I know there's probably like, ah.
Oh, I'm concentrating because I don't want to fall there, right? I don't want to fall at 60. So, but anyway, yeah, that's yeah. So my career turned into that, and in that photo, I'm riding equipment I designed, the handlebars, the tires, a lot of that equipment on that bike is something that I've developed with people or myself, and yeah, it's what I do now for a living. So,
Tell the viewers, this is a tough sport, and it's not, you're riding a bicycle that has to be that went from almost the Flintstones to technology sound right now.
Yeah.
Tell me about the body transformation. How, you probably, I was training you when you came here, and you told me about the collarbone injuries, the shoulders injury. What? Tell the viewers exactly the bones that was broken and how you rebuilt yourself, the bionic man.
Well, when you fall on a bicycle, probably anything on two wheels, the first thing is you put your hands out, right?
Right.
So, and if you don't, catch yourself, now you're on your head and your shoulders. So anything, at the top of me was broken, both shoulders, a lot of fingers. I never broke wrists or anything like that, but my wrists, we talked about that before. I've lost all my cartilage in my wrists now from all the years of riding. And so at 61 years old, I am now. Yeah, I think I came out of it very fairly, but I remember I fell in Germany once and ripped open my knee really bad, and I basically had to take a lot of time off to let that heal and let the knee work again. And I wore a tendon out from pedaling so much, and I think I was 31 or 32. I basically wore a tendon out of my knee. So I went down to the Lakers down here, it was not too far from my house, and I got to see their therapist, and they basically said, you can't ride your bike for 6 months. To let that tendon rebuild itself, right? So there was some of those things I had to deal with along the way, not being on the bike, resting or whatever. But again, I think I was lucky to overcome that stuff. And I think the technology or whatever we have today was not the same 20, 30 years ago. I think it was, we were all learning still back then. But anyway, no, I was lucky. I think riding within my threshold, riding within my ability is very, very important. I don't care if you're a car racer or whatever, you have to stay. It's all racing is all about that line. Don't cross that line. Stay within something you can control, right? Of course, it's not going to happen every time you go outside the line, you crash, but the whole idea is to stay within your ability. And that's where I think I excelled at.
Take me down one of the lowest parts of your career. I hear all the excitement and stuff, but take me down one of them things where you might have thought this may not be for me.
Well, I think I had lots of those. I think that you had to get up in the morning and really pump yourself up, especially when I was riding 400 miles a week during my mountain bike career. It was 400 miles every week that I was riding. And to get up in the morning after 100 one day and get and do another 100 the next day, you got to really pump yourself up for it. But there was times where you just get flat out beat down and you don't know how can I come back. And then a few weeks later, you're winning again. But I think the funny one is I'm riding a hill here locally, doing my 100 miles one day, and I'm suffering. This is towards the end of my career. I knew I'm older. I think this when I was 38, and I'm climbing a hill, just training during the middle of the week. I hear another bicyclist coming. I'm thinking, oh man, this is ugly. I'm just, oh, whatever. And I'm thinking this must be this famous team and all these people coming up the hill. I hear the guy coming and his bike is squeaking, and I look over. It's basically a day worker with a 6-pack of beer in his basket, right, on this crappy single-speed bike. And he's at the end of the day, he's riding right by me up and over that hill. And I'm like, oh man, this is ugly. So anyway, so I thought that was funny because that really mentally tore me down. That this guy, young kid, with a 6-pack of beer on the front of his bike, just beat me up the hill, right? So.
So
there's a lot of guys like that, I think. So
now that the career is over, you're a family man now. You have a daughter
and a son.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about, before we get into the family side of you, take me back to you're still biking and you know the career is about ready to be over, and you decided to take that next step and to actually start branding the sport, because now it's up to you to take the sport to another level with your name. Tell me about that.
Well, I think it's taking the product to another level. And that was because as an athlete, I had the desire to always have better stuff. And you're always looking for that. And I would spend countless hours. How do I make my foot stick to the pedal better? Or how do I hang on? These kind of things. Or so how do I not get a flat tire? One of my first products, actually my very first product that was successful was I was racing a race and the mud was in my face and I couldn't see very well. So I had to wipe my face, or what we call pull a tear off. And I lost the race by, 1 second, which back then 1 second's a big deal. And I knew if I didn't have the mud in my face, I probably could have won. So how do I keep the mud out of my face? So I created this fender, like a motorcycle, to the front of my bike. And I went to the very first race, happened to be a mud race. And everyone went crazy over my product, right?
Oh,
And I won the race because the mud wasn't in my face. So it was just an experience. And I went on to sell 500,000 of those in the first 3 years, right? So yeah, it was
wow.
a huge success. And then one day they weren't cool, so everybody quit buying them, and I had to figure out what to do next, right? So yeah, that was my first entrepreneurial product that did really well. And like you said, I think it changed the sport. It's changed the way we did things and the way we do things. But I was very lucky to work with a lot of people during my mountain bike career. I started with no suspension, meaning my bike had zero travel like a car. A car has shocks. My
Mhm.
first mountain bike had no shocks. The bike I retired on actually had 8 inches of shocks, front and rear. It had air shifting, so I had a canister of air. There was no cables. It was just, yeah, it was a $25,000 bicycle in 1998, right? So and I went from a bike that probably cost a couple $100 to a $25,000 bike. But anyway, yeah, so I was able to have all that and grow up during that time. So when I started doing it on myself, I just took that knowledge. I'm not an engineer. I'm just a guy who rode a bike for 20 years making money, and I make bike parts based upon that.
What
So
were some of the bad alignments that you might have dealt with throughout your career? Because all couldn't be success. It's just you're still learning at the same time. You had a lot of sponsorships, but what were some of the things that you look back and go, as far as your alignment with people, places, things that,
oh,
yeah,
I made some bad decisions doing
tell
that
me,
for
tell
sure.
me,
Yeah.
tell
So,
me.
well, on my mountain bike career, the photos we looked at earlier, I was
Yeah.
riding for one company, and another company came to me and gave me a lot of money, which I don't know if it was bad, but I was able to buy my first house and things like that with that income. But the sponsorship and the alignment with that company versus the company I was with before, the career ended a little bit sooner than it should have had, only because that company couldn't put together the back of what I needed. They could pay me in the front, but the back wasn't there. But the company prior to that, the back was really good, but the money wasn't there. So it was like I probably should have stayed with that guy and probably should have rode that out. And then yeah, I then another one where I actually needed some money, and I was writing for one of the best companies in the world, but they wouldn't pay me what I needed. So I moved to a smaller company who was paying me. It probably wasn't the best decision, because then that company figured it out. They became the best, and and now here I am writing for a smaller company. So those alignments sometimes were just tough. So I have to say, as an athlete, no one's guiding you. You're doing what you think is best for your
Who
career.
was guiding you, Toby, during this? You're still young. Who's guiding you?
Nobody. I mean, it's not
You,
like my parents weren't involved. It's just they didn't understand it. They weren't in the day-to-day thing, So it was me the whole time. And I had a great childhood. That's not the issue. My parents
right.
were awesome. It was no, it was just me. My dad was actually a ball guy. He liked ball. He ball games, man. That was his world, but bike things wasn't him. But I had to kind of figure it out myself. I lost a lot, not lost, spent a lot of money I should probably kept, and buying cars and things like that. So
I
just
think we
along the
all
way,
do that when
yeah,
we're
you
young.
just don't know. But the desire for the second career was there, and I think that's why I had it. I just didn't. I loved my life as an athlete, and I wanted to keep it going as long as I could, and I made it till I was 38. So there
Tell
you
me
go.
about Toby, the family guy. Tell me about the family.
Ah,
A
well,
young family now. What are
it's
you
funny.
telling them?
My wife at the time, she was waiting to have our first child, and I just wasn't ready because I was traveling so much. So we had our daughter, and during that time, I started slowing down, and I can't equate having a child to doing 65 miles an hour on a mountain bike. I don't know, but I was really fit at the time, but my career slowly started going the other way once I had my first kid. So I think that, and my age and all that stuff too, but it became a focus. And I think what happened was I quit racing. I had these products in my mind, but I found myself not focusing on it until one day I woke up. Hey, I have a family. I need to focus on a career. I need income. I need things to evolve as a person outside of racing, and because of the family. And I did. And I went on to create companies, buy and sell, and create products and create companies that, I've owned 4 companies now. I've sold 3. So anyway, I went on to do that. I think to take care of the family, to be a family guy, right? That was the main goal.
Now,
So,
what do they think of? Do they know your career? So what do they say about your career now?
yeah, I don't know. It's a part of my life. It's who I am. They expect that. It's no,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know if the kids realize, they do realize my history and, the fame that came with it. But they grew up with it. So for them, it's what dad does. Right. So.
Something that I want to talk about, which I did not know. Tell me about your writing.
My what?
Your writing.
My writing.
Poetry.
Poetry.
Yeah. I'm reading it.
Where do you see poetry at?
You got poetry on here.
No, I wrote a lot of articles how to. I don't think they're poetry. I think that it's how to ride a bike, it's how to do things. Poetry, maybe I did poetry in motion with your bike, but no. I did write for a
Published
while.
author. Tell me about the published author.
The what?
You say it's public author on here. Published author.
Published art. Well, that's it. Yeah, I didn't write any books. I've been involved in books, but I wrote articles for magazines on how to ride a bike. So, yeah.
And how did they turn out?
Good. As a matter of fact, if I would have had more time, I probably should have followed up with that. It was good. A lot of people, the articles were really good, and it was funny. One of them, I always say, you ask a person, what's the most important part of your bicycle to go fast? What would your answer be? I'll ask you. So if you're going to race your bike, what's the most important part of the bike?
The chain?
No. It's funny. It's funny because people don't realize it's the brakes, right? It's the brakes is how you go fast.
How is that?
Well, if the brakes are good, you slow down later. So you come into a turn, if your brakes are really good, you hit them later into the corner. So the later you hit your brakes, the faster you are. So it's kind of funny. People don't realize that the brakes are probably the most important part of your bike when you're racing, because you want to make sure you use those at the last second at the best of their ability. So for me, the brakes are the most important part of going fast.
Never even knew that. So before we wrap up, take the viewers down one of the most memorable moments of your life.
Oh man. Okay. Racing wise, I think.
Do both. Give me 2. No, I'm gonna be easy. I'm gonna give you 3. Give me 3.
Oh man, make it easy on me, huh?
But you got so many that they're all gonna be great. So give me.
Yeah, well, I think I've probably told different stories than this before, but I think winning a championship at 36 years old in mountain biking was probably one of my best. It was very brutal. The type of racing really fit me. It was 4 guys at a time racing down a mountain multiple times. There's a little bit of BMX, a little bit of downhill racing kind of combined. But I'm 36 years old, and I was the guy to beat, and going against a lot of 20-year-olds, and I think that what I had to mentally prepare and physically prepare myself to win this championship, I think is probably one of my for mountain biking is by far the best thing that ever happened to me. And then for my BMX career, it had to be just all the travel, all the places I've been, all the people I've met, just to travel the world and be in corporate places. A funny one was I was at Raleigh Bicycles. I'm 18 years old, and the president asked me what BMX was, because over in England, they didn't know. Companies in England, I'm in England. So I backed up down the hallway, and I come flying down the hallway, and I jump without a ramp, up onto the corporate table, which is 40 guys sitting around, and skidded right up to the president of the company, said, "That's BMX." And my American boss, basically his mouth just dropped, right? He was like, "Oh my God, Toby just did that." And the guy asked me, and I had to show him. He didn't know what it was. He didn't know we could ride a bike like that, but I could jump my bike up and over a hurdle, high hurdle, and make it every time without a ramp. So called a bunny hop. Anyway, so just those kind of experiences. And I think for the third one, it just have to be finding the right person in my life and being married to that person. And you know who she is. And I think that, and I think that that's really, really important. And that's special to me. That I'm going to spend the rest of my life with somebody I love and enjoy. And I'm very, very proud and happy to have that this late in my life. So it's tough to have that, but I got one.
Last question before we wrap up. You're definitely a guy that basically all three of these nicknames, from Hollywood, from Captain Elbows to Coca-Cola Cowboy, definitely you lived some adventurous life. You left a lot of legacies for people to remember. Leave the audience with something to remember.
Enjoy your life, right? Work hard and take care of other people.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been no other than Mr. Toby Henderson, Captain Elbows, Coca-Cola Cowboy, Hollywood himself, on the Andre the Beast Crayton show. Okay, don't go nowhere, because now we got to do a teaser.
All right, what's that?
That's where I'm going to open up, and I'm going to say, on this episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton show, we have all the way from Southern California, Captain Elbows. And then you'll give a little spin like, "Hey, I'm blah, 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 blah. You want to tune in? I'm going to share with you several parts of my life, or 5 motivating pictures of my life, 5 motivating whatever, just a little snippet." Okay. If you mess up, don't worry about it. We'll just do it again, because I got the tape still running.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
On this episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton show, all the way from Southern California, we have no other than Captain Elbows himself, Mr. Toby Henderson. Toby, what's about to happen on this show?
Hey, Andre, we're going to see a couple great careers I had, from mountain biking to BMX and back and forth to an entrepreneur selling products to those kids. Let's do that again. How's that? I thought I nailed it the first time. I'm usually pretty good at it, but go ahead.
Okay, let's do it again. Wait a minute. It's fine. Hi, and on this episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton show with my co-host Yolanda M. Smith, we have all the way from Southern California, Mr. BMX himself, Toby Henderson. Toby, what's about to happen on this show?
Hey, Andre, so we're going to go through the life and trials of Toby Henderson, BMX mountain bike guy turned to businessman, family man. We're going to talk about a really great time I had as a kid and what I do today and everything in between. But watch for the show, because it's going to be awesome.
That and more on the Andre the Beast Crayton show. Man, that's good. Man, I am so proud. I'm like, just imagine, this is something that I said a long time ago. I know, because, naturally, my kids can care less about my bodybuilding career, football, track career, whatever. But just imagine if we can turn back the hands of time to have the technology. Just imagine you going viral doing 60 miles an hour, how much money you could have made off of the views.
No, it's funny that, because I make BMX bikes now. I'm working on one this week, a new one. And I've known a lot of my technology I've developed are now in the Olympics, a lot of it. If you go to the Hall of Fames of BMX and you walk around, you see a lot of stuff I've developed. But if you think about, if I would have had the bike I make today in 1980, man, things would have been different, right?
Yeah. Like, what's the difference between the bikes that you came up with now versus the bikes back then?
Well, they're a lot longer, for one. But I created a technology called what we call oversize. It's not really technology, but basically all my axles and my cranks and everything have a big spindles and big hollow versions to make the bike stiffer. And now the bikes are aluminum and carbon fiber, where before they were chromoly, much heavier, and they were really flexy. But the bikes I make, when you pedal, they go forward. The whole concept is that every bit of energy you put out makes the bike move forward and not twist side to side. Because back then, you get to start to get your bike would do all this movement. So as soon as you start pedaling, the bike's doing this. It's not moving forward, right? So you loss of energy. So for BMX, everything I do is to not lose energy when you sprint. So
Are there women involved in this sport now?
oh yeah. It's about, I don't know, the women are probably 1/5 of the size of the men's class. But yeah, there's Olympics for the women, gold medalists and all that stuff. Yeah.
Which one do you like the
And I
best?
sponsor.
Which one do you like the best? Mountain biking or the BMX racing?
Well, I get asked that a lot, but I kind of alluded to a little bit during the interview. In a BMX race, you would go to Bakersfield, California, and you'd sit around all day long racing your bike. My mountain bike career, I go to Vail, Colorado, and race for 5 minutes. So, which would you rather be, in Bakersfield, California, or in Vail,
I think
Colorado?
I'd rather be somewhere where I could stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, my mountain bike career, we got to stay at a lot of really crazy resorts because the mountain bike started. All these resorts were dead in the summertime. So all these houses, all these people who have houses on the slopes, these things are all available for rental because no one's there. So we'd go to these mountain resorts. They're so happy to have us because they've got some income, and we stay in just amazing places for like no money and just flying around the world and staying in. I've been to Finland, France, Norway, just racing mountain bikes. So
what's the most exciting place you've been to racing bikes?
Oh man, that's good. I think if I go back, I think I like Australia probably the most. Only because it's a little bit, more like here, other than the right-hand drive guys. But I love
race in
Japan.
Australia. Do you race in the Outbacks? You go to Sydney? You go to Avalon?
No, so my BMX crew went all over because it's, BMX and mountain bike have different kind of venues. In mountain biking, we need big mountains to do it on, where BMX, you can do it in the city centers. But no, in my BMX crew, we went all up and down the coast. But my mountain bike crew, we went to Cairns, Australia. There's a big mountain there. We had to get driven up in trucks, so they don't have snow over there. But the Outback, it was crazy because I remember racing down and they had spiders this big. You didn't want to go off the track and go into that. But they had these vines that had like razor sharp hooks the size of, about that big. And if you went off the track, you would go into this, this ivy stuff that would just rip you apart, right? So yeah, when you go over there, it's not the same as racing in Tennessee. Not the same thing. So
what do you do? What are you doing now? You're retired, sort of, but you still run your company. Outside of your company, like what are you doing? You got to be going to the beach.
Well, my wrist thing is been a problem. It really hurts my wrist. I'm actually we actually maybe have to go buy a bike now. For like an old person, go buy a bike like an old man rides, with my handlebars like this, right? So I can just ride around. But now we all ride electric bikes, and Joe and I are doing a lot of hiking. We walk everywhere now, so we're enjoying that, kind of changing things. I go to the gym a couple times a week. We do yoga. We do all this kind of stuff to keep my body moving, right? But as far as riding, I have to ride, to test stuff. And I do, but I come home and it just hurts. And it's the pressure like this. Because the mountain bike handlebars are really low. So my body and the mountain bike pushes back and forth like this. If my hand's low, it just beats my wrists. And there's no cartilage there. So it hurts.
So what kind of therapy treatment are you getting? Are you getting
I did the stem cell thing like we talked about the other day, but I actually, after I talked to him, I wanted to hit the guy up and see if he'll invest some of his time and money at his hospital to try to really see if this works, because so far it hasn't worked, but I've been doing it lackadaisical to a sense where I went a couple times and whatever, but see if he'll actually try to make it work. I don't know. But I saw some quacky doctors who want to fuse my wrist, but I don't think that's the thing where they take the bones and fuse them. Yeah. But right now you can see, but this is all my hand can move.
Man, that's
this one
crazy.
moves a little more. Yeah, and I got bone spurs on them and everything. So yeah, when I was with you, And we did that last time we were exercising. We were doing the chain thing. Remember that? We're doing
Yeah.
the ropes.
The ropes. Yeah.
And I remember going home to Jill's bed. I kept, because of course the house was for sale. So we're both sharing a twin bed. And my hands are over the edge of the bed at night sleeping. And both my hands are going numb. My arms are going numb. So I was
Really?
like, what's going on? So, yeah. So that was started really kind of all then. So finally I started seeing doctors. I got misdiagnosed, and people, these doctors want your money. And finally one doctor says, you got carpal tunnel in both hands, right? And not only did I not have the cartilage, you have carpal tunnel. So I was misdiagnosed early on. So I went, then I saw a carpal tunnel specialist. And of course, they take 6 months to even get a surgery, because these guys are doing 6 to 10 a day.
There's a lot of people that's been diagnosed with.
Yeah. So then my hands started getting really bad. I have some numbness still a little bit in this finger here.
Yeah.
But luckily I caught it early. It's 98% okay. And then this hand, I just did it because I had it, but it wasn't bothering me. So I just did it. So I didn't want to have any numbness like I have in this finger. But that's a different injury than the wrist. I don't know how they associate the two, but no one can really tell me what to do with the wrist. It's basically live with it at this point. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
So when I go to the gym, I don't do anything that I push on. I only pull. So every weight I do is a pull. It's not a push, right? So
well, don't injure yourself no more. Try to enjoy the rest of the life. This will come out in a couple weeks. Got to edit it and so forth, but I'll let you know.
Yep.
Ahead of time before it goes out. You guys have a great day. I gotta get ready for another show.
Okay.
Just back to back. All right, big guy. If you need me, hit me up.
Okay. All right. We'll see you soon, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.